The pediatrician's waiting room smelled like hand sanitizer and stale coffee. I sat there, flipping through a parenting magazine that was 3 years out of date. My hands trembling slightly, not from nervousness about the appointment. I was here because I'd lied. I'd told my neighbor Susan that I had a doctor's appointment just so I could use her grandson's name to get into this pediatric office, because my own grandson, Owen, was somewhere in this building, and I hadn't been allowed to meet him yet. He was 4 months old. 4 months. The nurse called a name, and a young mother stood up with her baby. I watched them disappear through the door, and my chest tightened. I shouldn't be here. I knew that. But when you haven't been invited to your only daughter's baby shower, when you find out through a Facebook post that your grandson was born, when every call goes to voicemail, and every text gets a response 3 days later, you do desperate things. My phone buzzed. I looked down, and my heart stopped. Rachel, my daughter, finally calling me back after 2 weeks of silence. I stepped outside into the Portland drizzle to answer. Rachel? Mom. Her voice was clipped, businesslike. Not the warm tone I remembered from before Brad. Before the wedding 2 years ago when everything changed. I need to talk to you about something. I knew that tone. It was the same tone she'd used when she told me the baby shower was just close friends, keeping it small. Then I'd seen the photos. 35 people. Brad's mother front and center, holding up tiny outfits. My daughter's co-workers. Friends from college I'd never met. The caption. So blessed to celebrate baby Owen with my village. I wasn't village material, apparently. Of course, honey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. How's Owen? I still haven't gotten to meet him yet. I could come by this weekend. That's actually what I'm calling about. She paused. I could hear Owen making those little baby sounds in the background. My heart ached. Brad and I were talking, and we think it's time you got to spend some time with your grandson. Relief flooded through me. Finally. Oh, Rachel, I'd love that. I could come over tomorrow, or we were thinking you could watch him regularly. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second, confused. Watch him? Brad's going back to the office full-time next week, and I'm starting my new position at the firm. We need childcare. You're retired, so you have the time, and you've been wanting to see Owen, so this works out perfectly. Something felt wrong. The way she said it, so matter of fact. No asking. No, would you be willing? Or I know it's a lot to ask, just an assumption. How regularly are we talking? I asked carefully. Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 6. We'll drop him off at your place on our way to work. That's 50 hours a week, Rachel. Well, yes, that's a normal work week. She sounded impatient now, like I was being difficult. Most daycares charge a fortune, and we'd rather keep it in the family. You always said you wanted to be involved. I closed my eyes. 32 years I'd worked at the Multnomah County Library. 32 years of checking out books, organizing story times, helping kids with homework. I'd retired 2 years ago with plans, travel plans, book club, volunteering at the literacy center, finally learning to paint, finally having time for myself. But this was my grandson. And there's something else, Rachel continued before I could respond. We're planning to renovate the nursery. Make it more appropriate. Brad's mother suggested some changes. And she's right. We need a proper changing station, a better crib, the works. We're looking at about $25,000. My breath caught. 25,000? I know it sounds like a lot, but we want everything perfect for Owen. Brad's promotion doesn't kick in until March, and with the new house payment, she trailed off meaningfully. We were hoping you could help. You have that retirement fund from the library, Dad's life insurance, and you don't really need that much living alone. Dad's life insurance. Frank had been gone 6 years, and she was talking about it like it was a spare piggy bank. Rachel, that money is for my future. My retirement. Medical expenses. Mom, this is your grandson we're talking about. Don't you want him to have the best? The guilt landed like she knew it would, because yes, I wanted him to have the best. I wanted to know him at all. But something about this conversation felt so transactional. So cold. Can I think about it? I asked. Sure. Her voice cooled several degrees. But we need to know by Friday. Brad's mother offered to help too, but we'd rather it came from you, since you'll be spending so much time with Owen anyway. She hung up before I could say goodbye. I stood there in the rain, watching it bead on the screen of my phone. My reflection looked back at me from the dark glass. When had I gotten so old? When had my relationship with my daughter become this? I thought back to the baby shower. I'd found out about it 3 weeks beforehand, accidentally. I'd called Rachel to see if she wanted to have lunch, and she'd said she was busy planning something. Just a small gathering with a few friends, she'd explained. Nothing big. You know how I hate fuss. But I knew Rachel. I'd raised her. She loved fuss when she was the center of attention. So I'd stayed silent, waiting for the invitation. It never came. A week before the shower, I'd asked her directly, "Honey, when is your baby shower? I want to make sure I don't schedule anything that day." The pause had been long, too long. "Oh, Mom. I'm sorry. It's really just for my inner circle. Brad's mother is hosting it at the country club, and she has a strict guest list. Very intimate. You understand." I'd said I understood, but I didn't. How was I not inner circle? I was her mother. The day of the shower, I'd gone to the botanical gardens and walked among the roses, trying not to think about it. Trying not to feel discarded. That evening, the photos appeared. Rachel, glowing and pregnant, surrounded by women I didn't know. Brad's mother had her arm around Rachel's shoulders in every shot, beaming like Rachel was her daughter. There was one photo that broke something in me. Rachel holding up a onesie that said Grandma's boy with Brad's mother, laughing beside her. Below it, someone had commented, "Blessed to have the best mother-in-law," Rachel had replied with 3 heart emojis. Now, 4 months later, I was useful again. Not for celebrations. Not for joy. For labor. For money. I drove home through the rain, my mind spinning. 50 hours a week. $25,000. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car, staring at my little craftsman house. Frank and I had bought it 35 years ago when Rachel was a baby. We'd painted every room together, planted the maple tree in the front yard, built the fence around the backyard, where Rachel learned to ride her bike. This was my home, my sanctuary, and suddenly I was being asked to turn it into a daycare. Inside, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Rachel had done her homework, where Frank and I had paid bills and made plans, where I'd sat alone after his funeral, trying to figure out who I was without him. I pulled out my phone and looked at Rachel's Facebook page. She posted almost daily now. Photos of Owen. Owen's first smile. Owen loves tummy time. Owen meeting his other grandma. Other grandma. Not me. Brad's mother, Patricia. I'd met her exactly twice. Once at the wedding, where she'd monopolized Rachel's time and made pointed comments about how modern mothers do things, and once at a tense dinner 6 months ago, where she'd spent the entire evening talking about her friends' grandchildren and how involved she was in their lives. "I'm there almost every day," Patricia had said, cutting her salmon with precision. Rachel needs someone who really understands parenting. Someone with recent experience. Rachel had been born in 1988. Patricia's youngest son was born in 1992. 3 years difference, and apparently that made her an expert and me obsolete. I scrolled further back on Rachel's page. There, the pregnancy announcement, 12 weeks in, posted on Facebook, before I got a phone call. I'd seen it while grocery shopping, standing in the cereal aisle with my phone in one hand and a box of Raisin Bran in the other. I'd called her immediately. "Rachel, honey, I just saw." "Oh yeah, sorry Mom, I was going to call you. It's still really early. We're not telling everyone yet. But it's on Facebook." "Well, yes. For close friends and family. Close friends and family." 500 people saw that post before I got a phone call. My tea had gone cold. I dumped it in the sink and stared out the window at the maple tree. Its leaves were starting to turn, deep reds and oranges. Fall in Portland. Frank's favorite season. What should I do? I asked the empty kitchen. The house stayed silent. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept doing the math. 50 hours a week of childcare. Professional nannies in Portland charged $20 to $30 an hour. That was $1,000 to $1,500 a week, $6,000 a month, for free. Plus $25,000. I wasn't an ATM. I was a person, a mother, a grandmother. But somehow, that had gotten confused. Friday came. Rachel called precisely at noon. "So, have you decided?" "No, hello. No, how are you? Straight to business. Rachel, I need to talk to you about this." Can we meet? Have coffee? I'm really busy, Mom. Can't we just do this over the phone? I'd rather talk in person. About Owen. About everything. She sighed. Heavy. Dramatic. Fine. Tomorrow at 2. The Stumptown on Division. The coffee shop was crowded when I arrived. Rachel was already there, Owen in his car seat beside her table. My breath caught when I saw him. Dark hair like his father. But his eyes, those were Rachel's eyes. My eyes. I wanted to pick him up so badly. "Hi," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi." Rachel didn't look up from her phone. "Can I hold him?" She glanced at Owen like she was considering it. He just fell asleep. Maybe later. Later. Always later. I took a breath. "Rachel, I've been thinking about what you asked, about watching Owen and the money for the nursery." She looked up now, interested. "I want to be in my grandson's life, more than anything, but 50 hours a week is a full-time job. I retired for a reason. I have plans, things I want to do." Her expression hardened. "So you're saying no. I'm saying we need to find a middle ground. Maybe I could watch him 2 or 3 days a week. Or half days. And as for the 25,000, never mind." She stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse. "I get it. You don't want to help. That's fine. Patricia already said she'd do it. Both things. She's thrilled to have Owen full-time, and she's writing us a check this weekend. Rachel, that's not what I'm saying. No, Mom, I hear you loud and clear. When I needed you for my baby shower, you weren't important enough to include. Now, I'm not important enough for you to help." She picked up Owen's car seat. He stirred but didn't wake. "We're done here." "Wait, what did you just say? About the baby shower?" She froze. "You said I wasn't important enough to include. But you told me it was Brad's mother's guest list. That it was small. And intimate." Her face flushed. "I meant, you excluded me on purpose. Mom, it's complicated. Brad's mother paid for everything. She had opinions about me?" Rachel wouldn't meet my eyes. She thought it should be people who would really be involved, people who could help. She and Brad were talking about childcare even then, and she wanted to make sure everyone at the shower was someone we could count on. The coffee shop noise faded away. "So I was excluded because I hadn't agreed to be your free childcare yet. That's not. You're twisting this, am I?" She hefted Owen's car seat higher. "Patricia was right about you. She said you'd be difficult. That your generation doesn't understand how hard it is for young families now, how expensive everything is. My generation. Rachel, I raised you alone after your father died. I worked full-time and did every school pickup, every sick day, every parent-teacher conference by myself. Don't talk to me about difficult. That was different." "How?" "I don't have time for this." She was moving toward the door now. "Enjoy your retirement, Mum. Enjoy your painting classes or your book clubs or whatever is so important. Patricia and I will make sure Owen has everything he needs." She left. I sat there, staring at my untouched coffee, feeling like I'd been slapped. The next week, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts. I drove by their house twice, hoping to maybe catch Rachel in the yard. But the place looked empty. I knew from her Facebook posts that life was continuing. Owen's 4-month photos, professionally taken. Owen's first pumpkin patch visit with Grandma Patricia. Not me. Never me. I joined an online support group for grandparents experiencing alienation. I'd never heard the term before, but apparently it was common. So common there were Facebook groups, articles, therapists who specialized in it. I read stories from other grandparents who'd been cut off from their grandchildren over disagreements, over money, over new spouses who wanted to create distance. Some of them hadn't seen their grandchildren in years. 3 weeks went by. Then Rachel called. "Mom." Her voice sounded strange, strained. "Rachel, is everything okay? Is Owen?" "Owen's fine. Can you come over? Today?" "Of course." "When?" "Now would be good." I grabbed my keys and drove the 12 minutes to their house in record time, my mind racing through terrible possibilities. When Rachel opened the door, she looked exhausted. Her hair was in a messy bun. Her shirt had spit up on the shoulder, and her eyes were red. Owen was crying in the background. "Come in," she said quietly. The house was chaos. Toys everywhere. Dishes in the sink. The nursery renovation was clearly underway. There were paint cans in the hallway and plastic sheeting covering the floor. Rachel led me to the living room and sank onto the couch. I need to tell you something. I sat down beside her, waiting. Brad's been having an affair. The words hung there. Patricia knew. She's known for months. That's why she was so eager to help with Owen. To be here, all the time. She wanted to keep an eye on Brad. Make sure we stayed together, she was hoping. Rachel's voice cracked. She was hoping I wouldn't find out. Oh, honey. I found text messages last week. He's been seeing someone from his office since I was pregnant. Patricia actually helped him cover it up. She'd babysit Owen and tell me Brad was working late, but he was with her. This other woman. Rachel, I'm so sorry. There's more. She looked at me now, and I saw something broken in her eyes. The nursery renovation. That was Patricia's idea. She said we needed it, that everything we had wasn't good enough. She paid for most of it, but I found the credit card statements. Brad's been using our money we didn't even have to take this woman on trips. That's why we needed $25,000 from you, not for Owen, to cover up Brad's spending. My heart clenched. Patricia's known all along. She encouraged the renovations specifically so I'd need to borrow money, so we'd be more tied to her. She wanted control. Rachel was crying now. And I let her have it. I let her push you out. I convinced myself she was right, that you didn't understand, that you were being selfish. But she was using me, using Owen. I pulled Rachel close. She sobbed against my shoulder like she was 12 again, like when Frank died and the world felt impossible. I'm leaving him, she said. I already filed, and I told Patricia she's not welcome here anymore. But Mum, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything, for the baby shower, for using you, for believing her over you. Shh, it's okay. It's not okay. I was horrible to you. I excluded you from everything, and then when I needed something, I treated you like a bank and a babysitting service. Patricia had me convinced that's what family was for. That's what grandparents should want to do. Owen's crying had gotten louder. Rachel pulled away, wiping her eyes. He's hungry. I should. Can I asked. She nodded. I went to the nursery, to the half-finished room with its expensive crib and designer wallpaper, and I picked up my grandson for the first time. He was heavier than I expected. Warm and solid and real. His crying stopped when I lifted him, and he looked at me with those blue eyes, Rachel's eyes, my eyes, and something in my chest unlocked. Hi, Owen, I whispered. I'm your grandma. I've been waiting to meet you. I carried him back to Rachel, showed her how I used to hold her when she was fussy. We fed him together. Rachel on one side of the couch, me on the other, Owen between us. Can you forgive me? Rachel asked quietly. I already have. But Rachel, we need to talk. Really talk. About boundaries, about respect, about what a healthy relationship between us looks like. She nodded. I know. I've been going to therapy. Since I found out about Brad, the therapist has been helping me see a lot of things. About how Patricia manipulated me. About how I treated you. I'd like to be in Owen's life. Very much. But I can't be a full-time nanny. I have my own life. I know. I was wrong to ask that. I'm looking into daycares. Real ones. Patricia's offer wasn't help. It was control. And the money? Rachel shook her head. I'm not taking money from you. Or Patricia. Or anyone. Brad and I are selling the house. I'm moving somewhere smaller. Somewhere I can afford on my own. And this nursery renovation? She looked around at the half-finished room with its expensive paint and designer touches. It's all going back. Owen doesn't need any of this. He just needs to be loved. Owen had fallen asleep in my arms. I looked down at his perfect face, at the tiny hands curled against his chest. Can I ask you something? Rachel said. Would you want to watch him one day a week? Just Wednesdays. I'd pay you what I'd pay a daycare. You don't need to pay me. Yes, I do. Because you're not free labor. You're my mother, and your time has value. I smiled. I'd love that. Wednesdays with my grandson. Over the next few months, I watched Rachel become herself again. She moved into a small townhouse closer to me. She threw out everything Patricia had bought. She built a life that was smaller but real. Wednesdays became my favorite day. I'd watch Owen, and we'd go to the park or the library or just sit in my backyard under the maple tree. Sometimes Rachel would join us for lunch, and we'd talk like we used to. like mother and daughter, like friends. The divorce was finalized in January. Brad married his office girlfriend 3 months later. Patricia sent Rachel a long letter about betrayal and disappointment, about ungrateful daughters-in-law and hasty decisions. Rachel threw it away without finishing it. "You know what I realized?" Rachel said one Wednesday while we watched Owen practice rolling over on a blanket in my living room. "Patricia never actually liked me. She liked the idea of controlling her son's family, of being the matriarch. I was just the vessel for her grandchild. And now I'm free. We're free." She looked at me. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. To see that you loved me without conditions. Without needing something in return. That's what mothers do," I said. Owen grabbed my finger with his tiny hand and laughed. "I'm 63 years old. I've been a librarian, a wife, a widow, a mother. I've survived loss and loneliness, and the particular pain of being excluded by your own child. But I've also learned something important. Love doesn't require transaction. It doesn't have a price tag. It doesn't keep score. Real family shows up. Real family respects boundaries. Real family doesn't weaponize grandchildren or use money as control. These days, Rachel and I have dinner every Sunday. Owen calls me Gam, which makes my heart full every time. I still paint on Tuesdays, still volunteer at the literacy centre, still have my book club. But Wednesdays? Wednesdays belong to Owen, and that's exactly enough. Sometimes I think about that day in the coffee shop, when Rachel walked out, how close I came to never having this. If I'd said yes to everything, the 50 hours, the money, the demands, would we have gotten here? Or would I have just enabled a broken dynamic, teaching my grandson that love comes with conditions? I'll never know. What I do know is this: standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish, setting boundaries doesn't make you unloving, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to not rescue them from their own choices. Rachel learned that lesson the hard way. So did I. But we learned it together, and that makes all the difference. If you've ever been asked to choose between helping someone you love and respecting yourself, know that it's not selfish to choose both. Real love makes space for both. And if you're a grandparent who's been excluded, manipulated, or treated like a convenient resource rather than a person, you're not alone. There are so many of us, and we deserve better. Stand your ground, know your worth, and trust that the people who truly love you will find their way back. Because sometimes, the best thing you can give someone is the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, setting boundaries, and refusing to settle for crumbs when you deserve the whole cake.